Good morning, everybody. This is Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live from Austin, Texas. What's happening? Hey, it's another beautiful gray day out there today. You know, I'm embracing the gray. Why should we let a gray day, a gray, dismal, dark, non-UV, invigorating day dictate how we feel? It's a great day out there. It's beautiful. And today is Fat Tuesday. So you want to get your Mardi Gras on tonight. Go out and live it up. Maybe even tomorrow night with Valentine's Day. But if you can combine the two and have a little Fat Valentine's Day, well, you've got yourself a nice little social cocktail going on there. And then, of course, we're into the time of Lent on the heels of that. I'm not Catholic. I was baptized as a Episcopalian. But I did do a Lent one year. I was very serious about it. I was living in Seattle. It was, speaking of a dark time in a dark city, in a dark place, it was on the back end of my Saturn return. I was just coming through sort of those final degrees with one of the last passes of Saturn over my Saturn. And I went through Lent. Seemed like a good thing to do. It was a crazy kind of time. Well, the time itself wasn't that crazy, but the lead up to Lent. I'll spare you the details, but let's just say I had a lot of fun. And then 40 days, I was like 40 days without any adult beverages. And that was actually really, really good for me. And I did a little shamanic thing on the back end with one of the local shamans in the Seattle area. That was kind of cool. His story was very interesting. He was a Vietnam vet. And he was a helicopter pilot. And he was flying people, of course, in and out of the danger zones, the hot zones. And there were two guys, I think three guys that were down. And he was going in to pick him up. And all of a sudden, the Viet Cong were just waiting in the bushes. And they were going to take him out. And all of a sudden, they started firing on him, point blank. Like point blank. And he had no choice but to take off and leave. And there are two things that happened to this guy in that moment. Number one, not a single bullet hit him, even though he's being fired at point blank range. And number two, the look on the face of one of the guys that he had to leave behind. I think he got one guy into the copter. I think that might have been like the redeeming thing. But he had eye contact with the look of the guy on the ground who was being left behind. And that look was emblazoned on his brain. And led him through, I think, hell, to be honest with you. And he had to reconcile the fact that he's being fired at point blank range. And nothing happened. If you haven't heard my interview with Perry Eulander, Perry has a fantastic book. It's called Walking Point. And it's about his time in Vietnam and his spiritual awakening. And I think Perry could probably relate to this story just a little on some level. Anyway, that was he was my Sherpa on the back end. This guy was my Sherpa on the back end of my Lent experience in Seattle. And it was good. It was good. It was a good topper for me to sort of finish out those 40 days where I was actually improving. I was improving myself. Anyway, here we are. It's Fat Tuesday. It's the 13th of February. Been watching the Olympics. I love the Winter Olympics. I love the Winter Olympics. I like them better than the Summer Olympics because they're quirky. The Winter Olympics are quirky. You know, you've got the they've been shown a lot of the biathlon and the various versions. Like they've got like stages and longer biathlon races and shorter ones. And I'm fascinated by the biathlon. The biathlon and curling are my two most kind of, I don't know, I really like the luge too. I've been watching the women lugers. I have to tell you, a lot of those women lugers are pretty cute. I'm sorry. I'm feeling like this dirty old man on my couch watching these cute women lugers. Is that terrible of me? And they're great athletes too, but they're kind of adorable. So yeah, it's fun watching the Winter Olympics. I do have an improvement though, I think, for the biathlon. Now they've got to sit down. So what's really crazy about the biathlon? It's like they're skiing, right? They're skiing. It's cross country ski, and then at some point they've got to lay down and shoot targets with this air gun, and they don't take their skis off. I just noticed that last night when they lay down. Those skis are out prone, so they're shooting. They've got the prone skis, and then they fire. And then they have to get up with their skis still on. No skis are taken off during that part of the event. What I thought would be really interesting, okay, and this could be done. You could have the rifles be like the laser tag rifles, okay. So if you had to go and shoot, instead of hitting it with a bullet or pellet or whatever it is they're using, you could use a beam of light. And I know people out there would say, "Oh, that's great. That's great. You're taking it away from the gun realm." But then I thought, okay, let's make it really cool. What if you had just like laser tag on the back of the skiers backpack? They had a little laser sensor, so that at some point, if you wanted to, you could take your gun out and then shoot the back of the skier in front of you, and then disable them, and then you could take their lead. But here's the deal, right? Because you can't, that's not an easy thing to do because you've got to keep moving or else somebody's going to pass you. So it's not a given that you would actually do it, but you do it maybe in a way where it would really counter matter, like a sprint, and they've got maybe 5 feet ahead of you, right? And maybe there's a chase pack behind you, and all of a sudden you stop, you take out the rifle, and you focus, and laser tag the biathlete in front of you. And there's no guarantee you'd even hit that person either, right? It would be an interesting twist. And I think that the games always need a little bit of upgrading, in my estimation. But the thing I love about the Olympics is that they're human. They're human. You get to see actual humans doing things. And I was watching these two women, and they're the cross country skiers. That's what they do. They do the cross country thing, and they train in Alaska. They train in this remote area of Alaska, so that they can be able to do this cross country skiing because of the altitude, and it's cold there most of the year, and they've got snow a lot of the time. So they want to go to an area where they train a lot or can train a lot. And I just thought, wow, they're devoting their life and time so intensely to this sport that they relocate to this, godforsaken location in Alaska. And that's what they do with their lives. And I'm like, that's kind of amazing, actually, to have that kind of dedication. And you don't see, the Olympics have become incredibly corporate and commercial, and there's a real fine line between the amateur and the professional now, especially in the Summer Olympics, and especially with the real sexy sports like track and field. And of course, we have the American basketball players, who I believe they're still tossing the pros out there, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe they're doing college now. I don't know, but at one point the U.S. just got pissed off at losing. Let's bring the pros over. Okay. And then, of course, you had the great dream team with Michael Jordan and all those guys who just made a mockery out of international basketball. But I love the human element in the Winter Olympics. They're about as close as amateur as it gets. And every now and then you'll see these weird alliances where you'll have somebody pop up from an unusual country, or it'll be a person who does not fit the country that they're actually competing for, like there's a German gal who's competing for North Korea, or South Korea rather. Like, wow, that's interesting. How did that happen? You know, you get to see these things, and again, I get off on the human drama. I like watching people compete and do well, and even if they don't do well, there's something beautiful about the contingency of people that are there cheering them on and supporting them, especially at the Winter Olympics level. And Shaun White made his return to the half pipe after breaking his face last year, about 6 months ago, and he looked great. And little Chloe Kim, 17 years old, won a gold medal. How about that? So again, it's the human element that I love, especially about the Winter Olympics. However, as we watch the Olympics and we are celebrating the human accomplishment, the human achievement, and even the human frailty and how humans respond in an hour of defeat, all of those things coupled together, as we're witnessing them and celebrating the spectrum of the human experience, there are commercials that are being played during the Olympics that give us a glimpse of a very different future, and a future that may not be as human dominant as it has been for the last 2,118 years. So I'm going to play a commercial that's getting a lot of airtime during the Olympics. It's a commercial that is was produced and paid for by Microsoft. And the person whose voice you're going to hear in this commercial is a hip-hop artist known as Common. Some of you are quite familiar with him. He's an actor. He's a rapper. He's from Chicago. By the way, speaking of Chicago, they actually have a curling bar and grill in Chicago. If you live in Chicago, and I looked at the menu of this place, I think it's called Hyde Tiger, Hyde Tiger. I think that's the name of it. You got to go to this place. You can actually do curling, and you can have. And I looked at the menu. The menu looks really good. And there's another place in Chicago. It's a hotel, and they have a curling rink or curling facility on the top of the hotel. Now that one is not frozen. That one is not ice. But it's a rooftop hotel experience where you can have non-ice curling experience. And how cool is that? Anyway, Common is from Chicago. And I'm going to play this for you. And I want you to listen to what's being said here. Okay? You can't get the visuals, although you can look it up on YouTube. And if you watch the Olympics, surely you will run into this commercial. So let me play this for you now.
Today, right now, you have more power at your fingertips than entire generations that came before you. Think about that. That's what technology really is. It's possibility, it's adaptability, it's capability. But in the end, it's only a tool. What's a hammer without a person who swings it? It's not about what technology can do, it's about what you can do with it. You're the voice, and it's the microphone. When you're the artist, it's the paintbrush. We are living in the future we always dreamed of. We have mixed reality that changes how we see the world, and AI empowering us to change the world we see. You have more power at your fingertips than entire generations that came before you. So here's the question. What will you do with it?
Yes, that is the question. What will you do with it, or what will it do with you? So, the reason I'm sharing this commercial with you is about threefold. Number one, they're showing this commercial during the Olympics. And what did I just talk about? I just talked about you or me, or whoever is watching the Olympics, being engaged and being transported by the story, by the hero's journey, by projecting ourselves into that world, into that process, into that person, into that competition, with the pageantry, with the camaraderie. So we're open, right? We're open during this experience. So in this regard, the Olympics are a ritual. And they're a ritual of hope. They're a ritual of hope. They're a ritual of achievement. And they're a ritual of rebirth because they happen every 4 years. So when we experience the Olympics, we're being reborn theoretically into that realm where there's possibility. Okay, where there's possibility. And it'll be 2 years now when we see the Summer Olympics. And where are they going to be? I think they're going to be in Japan, aren't they? If I'm not mistaken. I think the next Summer Olympics are going to be in Japan. Anyway. And the next Winter Olympics are going to be in China. So it's very interesting that I think the next 3 Olympics are all going to be in the Asian theater, as it were. But this is what happens when we watch an event like that. We are entranced and switched on, and we have these kind of mythopoetic markers inside of ourselves. This is where the myths reside. This is where the archetypal experience of humanity connects with the competition that's taking place in another part of the world. And so when that happens, we're open. And this is where they pour the ingredients in. So you see a commercial like that, and it's like, wow, okay, it's like piggybacking on the momentum and the velocity of the experience that you're actually having by watching that event. And then there's visuals, and the visuals are captivating. There are people who are deaf, who are actually receiving the benefits of this fantastic technology. There are creative people, there are nerdy people, there are people who are ethnic or minorities. There are kids who are wanting to tap into this power, and they're wide open. They're as wide open as you are theoretically while you're watching the Olympics. It's all in this commercial. And you have Common who's urging us on, like, this is the future. It is here right now. And there are 2 things that he talks about inside the commercial, if you really listen. Number 1, he talks about mixed realities. And he talks about mixed realities and virtual reality, because this is where they want to take everything. Like, whatever it is, that Olympic experience, which in some ways is a virtual experience because you're experiencing it and you're not there, and you would never be there, right? But we can project and identify with those athletes in that situation. So to some extent, that's a virtual reality, or version of a virtual reality. And television has always been a version of virtual reality. Now, what they're talking about is something very different, where there's this blurred line between reality which is augmented or reality which is completely virtual and immersive. And so this is what's being not just pushed. Like, Microsoft doesn't have a product. They're not selling anything. They're not selling a computer. They're not selling a tablet. They're not selling a piece of software. What they're selling you is mind share. And they're actually grabbing yours. They're seeding your mind for the future so that when these things arrive, and they will arrive, that you're going to be ready for them. And when they do arrive, the whole idea is to de-emphasize the fear, to de-emphasize this gnawing and existential sense that we might be next on the endangered species list. And so they have to crank up the volume of this possibility, which is on the border of magic, right? It's on the borderline of magic. Because it allows us to do things with reality that we've never been able to do before. And then the other piece in there, if you really listen, it talks about AI. AI allows us to do all of these things. So he's an evangelist for AI. And in this case, AI almost has this power of being the Holy Spirit. And it is the Deus ex machina, or the spirit of the machine, or the ghost of the machine. And this is what they're selling. And it's happening right during the Olympics. Right during the Olympics, which is an important piece to understand. Now, Microsoft just published this on YouTube on February 11th. So it's been up for 2 days now. So they've debuted this commercial specifically for the Olympics. And you can check it out. You'll watch the Olympics. You'll see it. You'll see it. It's called Empowering Innovation. This is what Microsoft wrote. With innovative technology, such as artificial intelligence and mixed reality, we have more power at our fingertips than entire generations that came before us. Yet technology is just a tool. And a tool is only as useful as the person who wields it. We're celebrating individuals and organizations using Microsoft technology to change lives, inspiring us all to see the possibility within emerging technologies. Not the fear, not the anxiety, not the dread, not the warning label, but the possibility. The possibility. Ah, yes. Well, the possibility is much closer than you think. This is published just a day after Microsoft put that video up on YouTube and started running the spots in the Olympics. And this is from RT. Now the headline, it's a little dark, but we're gonna get through this, okay? Humanity is doomed now that robots can open doors. So this is a video of a robot called Spot Mini. And Spot Mini is one of these dogs that was created by Boston Dynamics. Now, if you have tracked Boston Dynamics, they were an independent company who was kind of on the cutting edge and the vanguard. A lot of MIT guys, Harvard guys, people, and they decided they're going to build robots. And they were purchased pretty early on. I think they got purchased in 2012, either 2012 or 2013 by Google. And when I was doing my shows at Gaia, I did a big special on this in the dark new age and emerging technologies, and I had a whole list of companies that Google had bought, just scooped them up. And they spun Boston Dynamics out. We'll talk about that spin. It's an important spin. But Boston Dynamics, you're probably aware of the dog. You've seen the dog, the robot dog. They were also the company that created the robot that did the backflip. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to read this. The latest Spot Mini doggy droid, originally programmed to help clean dishes, could be a formidable opponent should robots ever rise up against humanity. The extremely dexterous machine has mastered the art of opening doors. Okay, so now you got a robot dog that can open doors. Another sound creation by the team at Boston Dynamics, the Spot Mini, has been around before with a version of the nimble robot film marauding around an office space and even stacking a dishwasher. Now the firm, owned by Japan's Softbank group, has released new footage showing two Spot Minis combining to help one another through a closed door. My, oh my. The video shows one of the machines using a large clamp-like device to operate a door handle with ease. The clip, while impressive, is also somewhat creepy and reminiscent of a famous Jurassic Park scene. In the classic Spielberg classic, two velociraptors figure out the mechanics of a door handle with grisly results. So this is sort of the latest iteration of the Spot Mini, and it's like now these robot dogs at this point are incredibly expensive. Incredibly expensive. And I don't know what they would retail for at this point in time. But they're not at a consumer level yet. Okay, yet. Now it's important to track who now owns Boston Dynamics. The company is called Softbank, and they're based out of Japan. And where have we heard the name Softbank before? SoftBank was one of the early companies that decided that they were going to throw in with Donald Trump and invest in America. And he boasts about SoftBank's investment capital and the jobs that are going to come. Well, what jobs do you think SoftBank is going to create in this country? They're going to create plants where robots are going to be manufactured. That part is clear. SoftBank owns Boston Dynamics, and they are going to be at the forefront of the personal robotic revolution, where the Spot Mini will come down in price. I would assume that the first ones will probably be somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. And then they'll come down even more. And eventually you'll be able to own one of these things for about $1,500. And what's going to happen, and I've said this before, is that there is going to be an economic boom unlike anything you've seen in this country and this planet for quite a while. It'll make the tech boom back in the late 90s seem like bingo night at the VFW, okay? There's going to be huge amounts of money being made, huge amounts of cash or huge amounts of cryptocurrency being passed back and forth. And it will be the beginning of our demise. I'm kind of serious about this. I don't mean to be dark today. The weather might be dark. I may be a little dark. But I can tell you this is going to happen. It's going to happen. And that commercial that Microsoft is playing is to soften your brain. So that when it does happen, you see it as what? Possibility. And not a form of servitude in serving the robots. Not a form of prison. It'll be possibility, not prison. I would say that it's probably something that we need to keep an eye on. Because when we see a commercial like that, it's fine, right? It's fine. And I'm not here to say, let's go back to the Stone Age. I'm not a Stone Age person. We have technology. It does some good things. It allows me to talk into this mic and stream it, and you can listen to it, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can replay it. I mean, there's and this is just a fractional application of what's available to us. So there's a lot of cool technology out there. But every time a technology comes around that's innovative, it kills another business. Like when MP3s came out, it killed the music business. Totally killed it. Done, gone. Yes, people still make CDs, but guess what? Best Buy's getting rid of CDs. You won't be able to buy a CD anymore at Best Buy. Those days are over. The CD day is over, and MP3s and streaming music have killed the music business. What happened when we had the digital camera? Not the cell phone, but the digital camera. Once the digital camera came around, and then the cell phone, which piggybacked on top of it, it killed the photography business. Kodak, which had a high number of employees in their processing plants and in their film development and R&D side of things, basically got devastated overnight. So that industry went away. So when we have innovation is not necessarily a bad thing, but in most cases it replaces something else. We can see that with Amazon and what it's done to some of the brick and mortar businesses and putting them out of business. I mean, it all started with the box lot stores, right? Because the box lot stores were kind of the precursor to Amazon. There was huge. Lowe's, Home Depot, you know who they are. And they replaced the mom and pops because of the volume. And now the box lots are being replaced and gobbled up by the Amazon marketplace. This is what happens. And there's no going back unless the planet is pulsed with an EMP. which I don't think is going to happen, at least not anytime soon. Although it may not be a bad thing. That's a reset button, right? Everything gets a reset at that point. So we're going to have to navigate this time. Elon Musk, of course, says, well, in order to deal with AI and keep up with AI, well, we're going to have to embrace AI and have it on our own terms so that we can actually keep up with it and fight it. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. But I think one of the things that's been completely neglected throughout all of this is not our technological acumen and power, but our spiritual power. And what lies within our hearts and what lies within our minds and what lies within our spirits. And that you can't commodify. You might try to commercialize it. I think what Coke, I'd like to teach the world to sing, that was a commodification of the spirit. That whole song in the presentation. But you can't. You can't commodify it. That you'll never really see commercials about it because it doesn't sell. And this is where the illusion is, because we're being tricked into thinking that this is the ultimate advancement of our potential, is the interface with these technologies, which make us bigger, better, smarter, more than human. It makes us transhuman. And unfortunately, we're being sucked away by that tide, when in reality, there's a whole other vast potentiality inside of us that could interface with this, but is its own unique expression. And that's where we have to go, ultimately, in order for us to at least counterbalance whatever's happening and is going to happen in the AI world and the mixed realities world. Because it is coming. Trust me, it's on its way. A couple other things I wanted to talk about. Donald Trump Jr., he got sent mysterious white powder to his home, and his wife opened the envelope. Now, you can look at this two different ways. You can look at this if you're really, really arch and cynical that maybe somebody inside the Trump campaign who wanted to confer some sympathy onto the Trumps sent it, or perhaps somebody sent it and there's a link to some kind of terror group, maybe some dastardly presence in the Middle East, maybe the return addresses from Iran or Syria, and oh boy, here we go. I mean, there's that potential. Then there's the potential that it's kind of a soft hit, and the enemies, the sworn enemies of Trump, the denizens of the deep state, are reaching out and crossing that line and beginning to threaten his family. And I talked about, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because Trump has Saturn going through his fifth house, which is the house of children. And I said the one child that Trump has that has the potential for going through a difficult time along with him is Donald Jr., because Donald Jr. is a Capricorn. So his son is in Trump's fifth house, and Saturn is going to cross Donald Trump's sun, S-U-N. I believe Donald Trump is born, I think it's the first week of January, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, so here it is. Boom. Here is the first hardship that Donald Trump Jr. is kind of staring down. Okay? So keep your eyes on this, and keep your eyes on Trump's children, especially Donald Trump Jr., over the course of the next couple of weeks and couple of months. And of course, Saturn's going to be opposing Trump's planets in Cancer. And that's going to be a real test of his electorate as we move through whatever it is we're moving through with DACA and the immigrants and all that complexity. It's going to be an interesting it's going to be an interesting time in terms of that navigation for Trump and for the country and for the planet. There's something else what I want to talk about with that. Well, just this ongoing investigation. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, this is like open hand-to-hand combat with the FISA memo and basically going back to Obama and Clinton. I mean, this stuff is crazy. I mean, this makes Watergate look like, somebody stole their lunch money. I mean, this is kind of intense stuff, especially if it goes all the way back to Obama, which it looks like it has and does. Whether or not anything comes of it, well, we'll find out, right? We'll see. But clearly, there is a plan, there is a conspiracy, and they were trying to do everything in their power to take him out and to find whatever information they could and or frame him and or use it to fuel public opinion. I've never seen anything like this. And now we've got the pedophiles and the people who have been tarnished by domestic abuse and have to do the walk of shame now that they're showing up inside the Trump administration. This guy in Kentucky who was a fundraiser. Donald Trump doesn't know him from Adam. He got on board the campaign. He doesn't know that guy. So this is going to be a very interesting time in navigating through this time. Because as we get closer and closer and closer to what's really going on with the FISA memo, what's going on with the spying, what's going on with all this stuff, there's going to be more distractions. And the closer we get to the fact that people were pulling strings and doing things illegally to get the goods on Trump, the hotter the heat is going to get in other areas. Just watch it. Just watch what takes place. It could be economic. It could be more scandals. So just be ready. And by the way, the mainstream media is on life support. And they're so terrified of Trump now. Like the New York Post is apparently now running stories that are actually corroborating some of the evidence, which is clear in the exposure of what happened with the FISA report, the memo. And this is a big turn for the New York Post, who'd been very, very aggressive and anti-Trump. So I think that the mainstream media started to get the hint that people are not buying their shit anymore. Literally and figuratively, they're not buying their shit. So, again, fascinating times. But just watch as we get closer to the unmasking of the memo information. Watch what else happens peripherally. Because if it gets too hot, we'll be dealing with a big, big distraction. Maybe another Las Vegas style event. All of a sudden we're talking about something else. Speaking about talking about something else, I wanted to just play this little snippet here. There's this guy, Paul Hellyer, who used to be a defense minister up in Canada. And he just came out the other day at the Alien Cosmic Expo. So Paul Hellyer is way out there. And the headline here is, "The Illuminati is real and secretly running our world," claims former defense minister. I'm just going to play a clip of this. And I'll let you have a listen, and you can take in Mr. Hellyer. Here we go.
Of the Council and the U.S. State Department, which in late 1941 created a special committee to consider positive planning, the Advisory Committee on Positive Foreign Policy, on which council members, that's members of the Council on Foreign Relations, played important roles and set the stage for key decisions that would affect the post-war world. Well, these were the seeds of a new world order, and they have been working at it ever since. At the end of the war, they got a break. with Operation Paperclip. I'm sure that most of you here know about Operation Paperclip. But the U.S. military had their eyes on some of the Nazi scientists and engineers, and wanted to get their hands on them before somebody else did.
So essentially what he is saying, what Hellyer is saying is that between the Nazis and what happened in Dulce, New Mexico, that there was a whole new government that came out of that. Well, excuse me. Let's get rid of that. Here we go. Hold on one second. Technology, sometimes I really love it. And sometimes it's a pain in the ass. Anyway, I'm going to read you this and send you off pondering who's really calling the shots here. Paul Hellyer, former Canadian Minister of Defense, is believed to be the highest-ranking former official to come out as a believer of the popular conspiracy theory. As one of the world's biggest conspiracy theories, the Illuminati, is said to be a secretive global elite which runs governments from behind the scenes, is planning to introduce a new world order. Its key members are said to be drawn from Hollywood and were political and business leaders, and some even accusing its rulers of being reptilian lizards from space. Accusations vary in extremities, from the simple implementation of the NWO as a goal at the very least to the Illuminati being a highly satanic cult seeking to return the devil to earth. Other than repeated claims by conspiracy theorists, which have ballooned in number since the growth of the internet, there's no actual proof the Illuminati exists at all. However, in a podcast, Mr. Hellyer, who was in post in the 1960s, said the Illuminati, at least at its most basic concept, was real and all-powerful. He says that the hidden corruption that is continuing to be waged by leaders through needless wars, they focus on profits rather than, of course, stopping climate change. He goes on, Mr. Hellyer claims that technology to reverse climate change has been developed, but it is suppressed by the Illuminati, as most of its key members have big stakes in the fossil fuel industry, which they wish to continue for as long as possible. I want to kind of reframe that paragraph. Let's just say they have free energy. That's really what that paragraph is saying. And of course they do. He said you've got a secret cabal that's actually running the world, and they've managed to keep this technology under wraps until they can cash in on the trillions of oil assets they've got. And it's not going to change until hundreds and thousands of people band together and say, you've got to come clean, tell us what is going on, and change your priorities to save the world for further generations instead of blowing it on wars. Mr. Hellyer joins the ranks of world-famous conspiracy theorist David Icke, the former footballer and BBC One grandstand presenter who came out as a so-called truther in the 1990s. There's a number of links here. This is all on www.express.co.uk. So he's making the rounds. And there's quite a few videos that back up some of the points here that Hellyer's talking about. So if you want to get your daily dose of illuminated conspiracy from somebody that had a pretty high position inside the Canadian government, check out Paul Hellyer. There's a rabbit hole for you to go down. But again, we're hearing more and more of these kinds of, bits and pieces of some form of disclosure. And I'm not a huge disclosure person, but I think at some point it's going to happen. And it'll be interesting to see how all that manifests. All right. So it looks like we've reached the end of today's show. It's 10 o'clock in the morning here in Austin, Texas. Thank you for chiming in. Thank you for listening. And let's just go back to what I was talking about earlier with this whole AI thing. Remember, we have spiritual technology and it's inside of us. And we can tap into it. It's our God-given right. And this is what we're being steered away from. Again, I'm not saying go live in a cave somewhere and smash all the technology. But we have to balance this thing out. And the best thing you can do is just root this idea inside of yourself. Root this idea inside of yourself. That you are this wonderful piece of biology, and inside of you is great spiritual technology. And it's there. It's available. and just jump right into it. All right. Do you have any comments today? Anything going on in the chat room? No. All right. So let's get on out. Oh, I didn't do the time tunnel. Should we do a little time tunnel today? It's not a big time tunnel day, but all right. That was the time tunnel. Right? Yes. Hello. Testing. Testing. There we go. So today, February 13th, it's not a huge day for going back into time. I think the biggest thing on this day probably has to be in 1633 when Galileo Galilei arrived in Rome for his trial before the Inquisition. That happened on February 13th. And what else do we have? There's a couple of other interesting, but it's not one of those kind of wow days. I went through this earlier this morning. 1990, German reunification. An agreement is reached on a two-stage plan to reunite Germany. Saturn was in Capricorn. That's right. What else do we have? The Gulf War. 2 laser-guided smart bombs destroy a Miria shelter in Baghdad. Allied forces said the bunker is being used as a military communications outpost, but over 400 Iraqi civilians inside were killed. That's right. 1991, on February 13th, in 1955, Israel discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls. And in 1920, the Negro National League is formed. So yesterday was the birthday of the NAACP, and today is the birthday of the Negro National League, which was a baseball league where a lot of really great African American players played in. Satchel Paige being one of them. But other than that, it's not a huge day in history. Not a huge day in history. I think the Inquisition, Galileo Galilei arriving under the Aquarian sun in Rome. All right, so why don't we get on out of here? Let's do that. And let me find my console here. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thanks for chiming in. And I'll be back tomorrow, 24 hours from today.